Hi, I'm Yewleea, and this is the NewsBrief. And today we're going to be talking about all of the excuses and all of the reasoning Russia gives to its invasion and subsequently peace talks and why the peace needs to be reached. And of course, we're going to discuss it together in the comments down below, so you don't have to suffer alone and I don't have to suffer alone. So please leave your questions, suggestions, anything you have in your mind down below, and I'll read it and I will try to get back to you. Let's go. So Sergei Lavrov, who is the foreign minister of the Russian Federation, came out and gave all of his thesis, point by point, as to why peace talks are important and as to why peace on Russia's terms needs to be reached. The first point of this Russian propaganda softcore galore is that the special military operation was not about territories. It was about saving Russian people, or Russian-speaking people, or whoever they consider to be Russian people. The same people that were trying to stop Russian tanks, were giving poison to Russian soldiers, and were telling them to go back home, those people. And also the same people whose towns and cities now look like this. Cue in images on the screen. Yes, surely this isn't about capturing scorched territory. It's about protecting the Russian speakers, whose entire lives and homes they have ruined. Not to mention that also, since 2014, every territory that Russia captured, they're not saying that they have saved Russian people. They didn't open borders for these Ukrainian people to come and become Russians, right? No, they scorched them to the ground, and in all of their official propaganda and Kremlin communications, they say proudly, we've captured new territory, new Russian territories, new regions of Russia. So if your goal was to save the Russian-speaking people, or the Russian people as you call them, then wouldn't it be more reasonable to let them get Russian passports and move to Russia? Now you can have, or a troll can have, reasoning that, oh well, but they already have homes and it's hard to move. Sure, then why are they scorching the cities that they can't capture? Wouldn't it be more reasonable to then, if they can't capture them again, give these people Russian passports and let them move to Russia, rather than still demolishing and destroying their homes, those same homes that, be so hard for them to leave? All of these theses are gaslighting. They're gaslighting to try and prove their point. Russia is very good at taking something and taking a little bit of truth from it and twisting it. That's how their propaganda works so well. The second thing is Lavrov talking about Ukrainian neutrality. His thesis is that if Ukraine wants to get into NATO, there is zero reasons for Ukrainian independence, which literally makes no sense, because that's quite literally, again, I'm going to use the same word, against international law. Ukraine is a sovereign country. Ukraine is not subservient to Russia. Ukraine is not a republic in Russia. Ukraine has been independent since 1991, and Russia agreed to it and also re-agreed to it many, many times afterwards. Also, Russia has ratified Ukrainian borders, like after the fall of the Soviet Union, many, many times after 1991. Neither the UN nor any international agreements nor any international organizations take a membership in a defense alliance as something that leaves a country without independence or questions its independence. The Kremlin quite literally, here in this statement, puts out a colonizer's and imperial rhetoric. You can exist, but only on our conditions. Then, of course, we had a Russian ballad about only striking military objects. Russia doesn't strike civilian objects, only military objects. And that again comes from the mouth of Lavrov today. After we've had proof of, first of all, those cities that I've showed you that are scorched to the ground, what the whole city is a military object, a Russian-speaking city with Russians populating it was a military object. There has been Bucha that everyone has heard of, the Bucha massacre, Irpin massacre, the scorching to the ground of Mariupol, Olenivka colony, where POWs, prisoners of war, were massacred. We have Kramatorsk. We have constant hits on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, on Ukrainian shopping malls, on Ukrainian hospitals. While I don't like citing these organizations because they're largely useless, even the UN and Amnesty are showing proof of systematic attacks for Ukrainian civil infrastructure. So that one, I don't even know how you can lie so much through your teeth with all of the evidence widely available everywhere. Like, we live in a digital era. People are posting their own stories. People are posting their own apartments. People are posting their own experiences with being bombed in the middle of a bright day. And then Lavrov also talked about the Istanbul negotiations. You know, the ones that trolls really like to give us as an example in the comments of Zelensky not wanting peace because peace was offered to him. Well, it wasn't peace that was offered. It was actually Ukraine's capitulation that was offered in Istanbul. Quite literally, the agreement was demilitarization, changing of the government. Russia takes all the territory Russia wants, even the territory it wasn't able to capture. It was Ukraine can never enter NATO. Ukraine can never enter the EU. Ukraine has to pay reparations to Russia, I think, was one of the theses for that, which was like absolutely, it was a ludicrous agreement. And nothing about that agreement said peace. It was like, hey, let's put Ukraine in a hole and let's make them defenseless completely, without any military, without any allies being able to step in to help. It was a capitulation agreement. But Lavrov said that, you know, Istanbul agreements and Istanbul negotiations were constructive, and everything else has absolutely no chance for existing and has no perspectives because, well, you know, it's just not going to work. They're not good. The fact is that after the Istanbul agreements, there was a brief ceasefire agreement, and Russia violated it straight up by striking Kyiv immediately after. Nothing that Russia agrees on, nothing that Russia says is ever worth the paper it's written on. It's just words, and these words are not only lies, they're also deliberate manipulation and deliberate deception. And then Russia just keeps participating in these negotiations and these agreements just to say, look, see, we're doing it. Yet their conditions never change, and all of these conditions are never for peace, they're for capitulation. Then my favorite one is Lavrov says that Trump respects Putin, and that opens a path to peace. Now, that is one of the largest manipulations that I've ever heard, because what he actually means is, well, Trump is willing to listen to Putin, unlike other leaders who already know who he is, and what it's like dealing with him. And that means that Putin can convince Trump and pressure Trump into giving Putin exactly what he wants instead of actually reaching a just peace. So they're trying to build a picture for you of like just negotiations because, well, all these other leaders were dismissing Putin and they weren't giving him the time of day. They did. They gave him so many chances until they realized that there is nothing to talk about because he's quite literally psychotic and absolutely megalomaniac. And he says stuff that makes no sense. He makes up stuff. He talks in propaganda lingo and he says things that he knows are not true, specifically to gaslight you. So a lot of leaders tried. At some point, they just figured that it's useless and fruitless. Meanwhile, Trump is giving him the time of day. So Putin now sees another in where he can come in and he can just keep pouring water into Trump's ears and try and pressure him into the conditions that Putin wants. So that's what Trump respects Putin means. It's actually an incredible manipulation. They actually see this respect as a weakness and as a signal that they can continue putting forth old ultimatums and new ultimatums, because now the road is clear and, oh my God, they have a new opportunity to shine. Lavrov also mentioned that NATO is being dragged into the conflict and that NATO is planning on stepping into the conflict, and that's why it's a direct threat for Russia. Factually, NATO is a defense alliance, and the entire time, not just in this war, but in general, they try to avoid direct participation unless they have to. And I'm sure that we can differ on that statement in a lot of different cases, but in this entire time, NATO did actually more than it should have to avoid stepping into the conflict. Not that Ukraine has ever asked NATO to step into the conflict. We just asked for weapons so we can resolve it on our own. But NATO doesn't directly participate. NATO gives us help that we ask for. That's not participation. That's being an ally. Russia invaded Ukraine, and now Russia is trying to gaslight the world into thinking that they're a victim and they're defending themselves from the Western aggression. But there was no aggression. There's not a single recorded incident of Western aggression onto Russia. Then what's their justification for invading Georgia, for invading Moldova, for invading Chechnya? Chechnya had nothing to do with the West to begin with. What's Russia's justification for all of the other wars that they've historically started? They always blame someone else, yet the threat has never materialized. It's just Russia looking for reasoning to whitewash their aggression and their terrorism. Lavrov, like Russia historically, is trying to rewrite reality and rewrite history. It's been done by Peter I, and it's been done by Catherine II. Literally, historically, you can look at Russia's pattern of rewriting reality the way that it suits only Russia. They're trying to present offense as defense and terrorism as defense. They're trying to present occupation as the rights of Russian-speaking people in Ukraine or Russians in Ukraine, and diplomatic failures as constructive talks, constructive negotiations. Every single thesis that Russia puts forth there comes down to one thing: to place blame on Ukraine and on the West, and legitimize the war that Russia is conducting as something that they have to do for their own good, for their own defense. If Russia felt threatened and there was someone attacking Russia, why did Ukraine do it on the territory of Ukraine? And if Russia is defending itself, why are they not defending the territory of Russia? Why are they crossing a border into another country illegally? If it was always about the rights of Russian-speaking citizens and it was always about the rights of Russians in Ukraine, then, like every normal country, you open your border for these Russians to move. That's what a diplomatic solution, according to the international law, is. You give them asylum in Russia. You don't go and take over territory. That's 1500s thinking, 1800s thinking, imperial thinking, stuff that the world has put an end to, or we thought we did, but we didn't. If Russia wanted to protect the Russian speakers, then why did Russia scorch their homes to the ground? Why are they now internally displaced or displaced in Russia? If it's about protecting the Russian people who are already Russian, why are they brainwashing children in literal camps, in Russian youth camps, similar to Hitlerjugend? Why do they need to do all of that and pay so much money for propaganda and release so much propaganda if those people already had a problem, wanted to be Russian, and were looking for them? If Russia was trying to protect the Russian speakers, why were there people protesting and stopping tanks and telling soldiers to go home? Why in every single documentary Russian soldiers say that they're not welcome where they go and that people try to fight them? Citizens, civilians. Aren't those the civilians they came to save? That's all I have for you for today. I hope that you've enjoyed this brief. And if you have, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on all of your notifications. And of course, as per usual, send this video to a friend, give it a like. And if you have something to say, don't be shy, drop it in the comments down below. See you next time.